Hey everyone, Ace of Clay here, and welcome to another thrift store transformation, where I take an object from the thrift store and transform it into something completely different. In this one, I'll be taking this Easter Bunny figurine and turning it into a monster plant. So if you want to see what that is and how I do it, then keep on watching. Alright, with every thrift store transformation that I'm doing, I feel like they're getting harder and harder because it's taking me longer and longer to figure out what to turn these things into. And this rabbit in particular, I sat it in my living room for a good 3 weeks and just stared at it, trying to figure out what to do with it, trying to think outside the box and not make it into something with 2 arms and 2 legs. I'm pretty pleased with the final result. I think a monster plant was a good idea, and I hope you guys think so too. Well, let's start the video. Alright, for the first step here, I just want to block out that little rabbit at the bottom here with some aluminum foil, and then cover that, of course, with polymer clay. And then I'm going to go over most of the rabbit's body with more clay, just to hide all of the details that I don't want in my final piece. Now, to use this rabbit in a different way, I'm making the back the front, and the front the back. So right here, I am starting to shape out the mouth for my monster plant. And I don't want this to be a typical monster plant with that, Venus flytrap type mouth and head. I want the mouth and eyes to be on the stem or base of the plant, and then have some flowering pieces on the top. Now for this transformation, I want to incorporate some of the original parts of the rabbit figurine with my final design. So I'm keeping some of that denim texture from the overalls on the sides there, and I just blended my clay in with that, so there's a seamless transition. And then now I thought I was going to keep that grass texture, but I don't really like it, so I end up just covering it. Now the hardest part of this transformation was definitely trying to figure out what to do with the rabbit's arms. So I eventually came to the conclusion that I can turn them into like branches that kind of have a root feel to them. So I end up just extending those arms with aluminum foil, attaching that with masking tape, and then covering that with clay, and then having them just curve around to the front in the direction that the arms were originally curved. And then I do keep the base of the rabbit's arms exposed and blend that in with the clay that I'm adding. So this ends up looking pretty cool. I thought it was an interesting way to deal with those arms that were sticking out. And then as another detail, I'm adding a third branch to the bottom of the piece. Now I'm going to heighten the detail on the branches by rolling out some ropes of clay, arranging them on each branch, and then blending the edges in with the rest of the branch. And then doing this really just gives it a more organic texture and makes the branches, limbs, whatever you want to call them, a little more interesting. Now, as you have heard me say many times in other videos, at this point in the process, I have no idea what I'm doing. I actually have no idea what I'm doing or where I'm taking this thing for the majority of the creation process. I just know that I want it to be a cool monster plant when it's done. And I actually like doing it this way, especially for less serious projects like this one that are just for fun. Of course, some projects do take some planning, but like I said, for something like this, it's just really gratifying for me when I'm staring at the finished product, knowing that I just made it up as I went. And now it's time to detail the base of our monster plant around the mouth. I'm just creating some vertical ropes of clay and blending the edges in with the rest of the piece like this, and then just adding more all across the bottom and around the back. And then as you can see, I'm bouncing between a few different tools here. I got a medium ball stylus, a small one, some color shapers, and I'm just using those to work these details until they look how I want. And at this point, it's starting to look like a haunted tree. I'm fully aware of that, and I was aware of that when I was doing it, and I actually considered switching it from monster plant to haunted tree, but I stuck with the monster plant idea, and then with the details that I had later on, it definitely loses some of that tree vibe. And then now to integrate my new details with the existing details on the rabbit figurine. I'm just extending those wrinkles from the rabbit's overalls onto my clay. And then just really finishing off those details again with like 5 different tools. Now I'm detailing the inside of the mouth and then finishing off the details on the bottom. And then to create the eyes, I don't want it to have eyeballs, I want it to just have holes where the eyes would be, so I'm just creating the bottom of the eye with a rope of clay that tapers at each end, placing it into the shape that I like, and then blending it in with the rest of the sculpture. And then I repeat this process on the top like so. And then again on the other side. Now I'm adding some more raised details to the upper half of our monster plant base like this. Just placing that shape how I like it and blending the edges in with a ball stylus. And then this is where we're at on the front and the back. Not too bad. Alright, now the eyes are a little too big for me, so I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller with a small piece of clay in the corner here that I blend in like that. And then using this tool, I have no idea what it's called, I am just creating a nice texture of vertical lines in the eye sockets. Like that. And then just finishing off the front here with some additional details. And then here I'm starting to create an overall texture for the entire piece using my ball stylus. As you can see, I'm rolling it for the most part, trying not to drag it, just to create some nice soft lines. I don't want them to be too harsh. That's why I'm using a ball stylus for this. And I'm just going over the entire back with this technique. Now it's time to add some teeth. I want them to look like they are sort of an extension of the surrounding area and look like the thing broke in half and opened up so it could start talking. If you can picture that. I'm using just small triangular pieces of clay like that and blending them into everything else. I don't use armature for them. I don't put wire inside to reinforce them. They're short enough where I'm not too worried about them breaking. But if you were worried about them breaking, you can always add wire inside of anything. Here I'm just blending everything together, integrating those teeth with the rest of the piece, and it's looking pretty good. Now to finish off all of the details, I'm just going in one last time to smooth out all of the crevices like this, getting rid of all those ball stylus lines that I don't need, and finalizing it as much as possible. And then now here I'm going over all of the raised areas with that same tool to create some more details, and I'm just working those details until it looks exactly how I want it to. And then again, I am fully aware that it looks like a tree, but we make it work. You'll see. finishing everything off on the base of our monster plant here. Switching between a couple different tools to make that happen. And here we are. Now it's time to create the flower on the top of our monster plant. And I'm covering the bunny's face with some polymer clay. But I'm going to keep the ears exposed and turn those into seed pods. You'll see what I mean in a second. Now to turn the ears into seed pods, I am just filling in the front of them with some clay and texturizing that to match the texture on the back of the ears. Like that. And then just for fun, and of course to integrate the ears with the rest of the sculpture a little bit more, I'm going to create 2 brand new pods, like so, and texturize those just like the ears. And this worked out really well. I was really surprised. And then I want to add a couple more smaller flowers to the stems on this thing. So I'm just poking in a little toothpick where I want the smaller flower, adding some bacon bond and a ball of clay on top of that. Now I'm detailing all of the flowers that I've added, and I end up not keeping this design, so don't worry. I do bake it, but I end up changing it, so just keep that in mind. Now I'm creating 2 really small buds to go underneath that big flower on the top, but I end up taking these off later, so just want to keep that in there to show you my entire process. Now I have some pre-baked teeth here that are from a previous project that I'm going to use to create some thorns. And to make these into thorns, I'm just cutting off the bottom of them to shorten them a little bit, and I'm poking them into the clay. And then here I'm just trying to figure out where I want to put these. That looks like a good spot. Let's put it there. Alright, looking good. And then I add several thorns throughout the rest of the piece as well. And then these are made from Primo accents. It's the translucent kind, and the only reason they're translucent is because I used them for teeth. They could have really been any color I wanted them to be. And now before I bake this, I'm just brushing the entire surface with some clay softener to remove fingerprints. And then because I don't want that lower branch or stem to droop in the oven, I am going to prop it up with a piece of aluminum foil. He's ready to bake. And then now he's baked. After sleeping on this, I decide to rework the shape of the flowers because I really don't like that original design. So what I'm doing here is just creating some chunky petals, if you will, and then just adding them right on top of that initial design, and I think it looks so much better this way. And then of course I'm repeating this process until the entire flower is covered, and I'm also doing it for the smaller flowers as well. Why I didn't do it like this in the first place, I don't know. And then here I'm just creating this sort of vine stem thing on the side that I don't end up keeping because I don't like it. So I take it off. And we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen and detail the petals a little bit. And now it's ready for its final bake. Fresh out of the oven, after it is completely cooled down, it's time for a first coat of paint. And I decided to paint the entire thing purple and then go on top of the purple with some green. And the first coat is really unsatisfying. The second coat looks a little bit better, but it's really cool seeing the parts of the original rabbit fully integrate with my sculpted areas. That was satisfying. Third coat's done. Just gonna paint the inside of his mouth here black. Really lucky that I could fit my paintbrush in there, because if I couldn't, I would have to figure something else out. And normally I would have put some black clay in there, but I wanted to keep some of the original piece exposed, so I didn't. Now it's time for the first coat of green. I am just adding this very sparingly at first because I really have no idea how this thing is going to look when it's done. I really don't. I know I keep saying that, but it's the truth. I'm starting with a very dark green, and I'm just going to work myself up to a lighter green. And in between layers, of course, always make sure each layer is completely dry before adding the next one. Now here we go, brightening up that green a little bit more, having a little bit more faith in this color scheme. Still not entirely sure about it, but so far, so good. We're getting there. All right, getting a little bit brighter here, especially around the face. Like that, looking good, looking good. And now we're getting really bright, and this was a really satisfying coat to do just because it really brings out all of those textures. And of course, the sculpture is pretty much painting itself with this method, which is awesome. Now it's time to paint the flowers. This is my first attempt at coloring them. So I am gonna do a purple to orange gradient, purple on the bottom, orange on the top, like that. And I'm just being very careful, building the paint, not just going on too heavy right off the bat. Now I'm adding some orange, like so, a nice little sunset thing going on here. And repeating that on the smaller flowers as well. And then for some reason I thought painting the seed pods yellow would be a good idea, but they end up looking like corn on the cob. And that's not gonna work. To make myself feel better, I'm just detailing the petals here with some red dots. Those look cool, but I'm not sold. I really don't like the orange. So I go over the orange with some red, and I like the red so much better. Some of you may like the orange better. It just really wasn't doing it for me. And there we go. I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now it's time to get rid of those yellow seed pods. I am painting them completely purple, and then I'm going to follow that with some lime green so that it's a nice little green to purple gradient, and then I top it off with a little bit of yellow just to brighten the tips a little bit and really finish it off. And then I really liked the dots that I did on the orange, so I'm just doing those again in a darker red, like so. And this is the last step. And it's done. Our Easter Bunny figurine is now a monster plant. Let me know what you think of this transformation in the comments. And that's a wrap. I hope you like my little monster plant. I think after the initial struggle of figuring out what to do in the first place and then what color to paint the flowers and everything else we ran into, I think it turned out pretty cool. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and then follow me on Instagram and Facebook at aceofclay. Thank you so much for 50,000 subscribers. I can't believe we've already hit that milestone. I can't wait to create more content for you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.